communities in the Pacific region. So before I introduce our resource person, our guest for this conversation, allow me to introduce to you first Global South Coalition. So Global South Coalition, its mission is to dismantle institutional, structural, and interpersonal and social oppressive systems in place affecting menstruation, individuals who menstruate, and their ability to access basic inalienable human rights, critical resources to live happy and healthy lives, and obtain dignity. Global South Coalition strives to unite organizations and individuals who share their vision of reclaiming dignity for each individual during menstruation and aim to transform the menstruation movement to center dignity. So, Global South Coalition is founded by Radha Podel, and it has been very active in educating women and girls as well as organizations around the world. So, one of the uh, important concepts that we have to understand during this conversation is the is the definition of dignified menstruation. So for Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation, dignified menstruation is defined as the state of free from any forms of menstrual discrimination, including stigma, taboos, abuse, violence, restrictions associated with menstruation throughout the life cycle of menstruators within all identities. So, um, for the menstrual discrimination, which will be tackled in detail by our guest for this day, the definition is it's taboos, shyness, restrictions, abuse, and violence associated with menstruation throughout the life cycle of menstruators, who are, of course, women, girls, trans men, and queer. It is a form of sexual and gender-based violence and violation of human rights. So it is an honor for me to introduce to you Ann Pacoa, a registered nurse and education policy analyst. So Miss Ann, please take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Ampar. Welcome, 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 everyone. First of all, before I introduce myself, first of all, I would like to, before I introduce myself, I would like to give a big round of applause to the Global South of Dignified Menstruation, and in particular to the mighty, mighty Radha, who, in her own terms and efforts, have been able to ensure that this movement comes into place. And also people like you, Amber, and the others in the team. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to amplify some of the issues that are being encountered by our region, our beautiful Pacific region. Okay, so my name is Anne Pakor, like you said, Ampa. I'm a registered nurse by profession. I'm also an educationist. And I love what I do, but most of all, I love being a human rights activist. And I guess how we interconnect through the flaws of the work we do last year through Pefi, who is one of our woman chiefs from the Pacific, but is currently living in New Zealand. She's been very instrumental in making sure that we capture the voices of not only those from an upper level, but those from the average level and also those down in the grassroots. And for me, my conversation would be to capturing those voices that are not normally heard in particular to these regional spaces. So just to prior to explaining further on, I would like to say that there is a platform that I'm currently engaged in. It's called the Sexual Reproductive Health Rights dialogue that's funded by the UN Spotlight Initiative, and that has been a project that was implemented by a coalition partners, including Vanuatu Young Women for Change, Vanuatu Human Rights Coalition, and Christian Community Health School and Nursing Services, Batumara Consortium, Navara Films, and the
Mhm.
Vanuatu Good Indigenous Neighbor. And I guess because of that platform, that's when Rada and I have been able to meet and bring these discussions forward. Now, just bringing it back to the topic for today, the onset of menstruation can be seen as a changing pattern from childhood to womanhood. Okay? Every girl needs to grow up, and every girl grows up. Okay? It doesn't matter whether there'll be grown up girls in a certain period of time. It doesn't matter whether they're going to be where they're going to grow up in a rich country, or whether they'll be growing up in a poor country, in a poor situation, or in rich situations. A girl is a girl. A girl child grows up. And therefore, our topic for today is that we want to amplify some of the restrictions that have been able to disenable the human rights of the girl to access the social and economic opportunities for her to be dignified as a woman or as a young girl as soon as she has that onset of menstruation. So I believe I believe that when a girl child is growing up, there has to be a lot of preparations. These preparations has to start from home. The education facilities, for example, from kindergarten has also, we also have to make sure that there has to be these preparations. We don't expect a girl child to have a period at the age of 6, but we want to make sure that a girl needs to be dignified. If a girl, to enable a girl to be fully dignified, these facilities have to be provided. Now, studies have shown that teachers lack the knowledge and the management skills to be able to accommodate a menstruating student. The menstruating girl gets bullied at school because maybe she stained her skirt, maybe she stained her uniform. And today, as we sit and discuss, this matter today, I can guarantee you, or Amber and I can guarantee you, that there's a lot of lack of access to good toilets and running water. There's a lot of facilities today that has no water and no soap, no tissues at all. There's a study that's been done in the Pacific region that shows that a lot of these girls are being discriminated because of the lack of these facilities. In PNG, for example, there's a lot of stigma and discriminations. If a woman does not follow her custom when she's menstruating, then that means that she's being discriminated at. She's being labeled the stupid woman, the foolish woman, the crazy woman, just because she prepares food while she was having her menstrual period. A woman, when menstruating, in a lot of these specific cultures, cannot make food or cannot prepare food and offer the food to the men or to their husbands. And therefore, if the woman continues to do this, she's more likely to be beaten up. Many of these girls and women in Vanuatu, of course, but particularly in PNG and the Solomon Islands, believe that menstrual blood and menstruating women are dirty and unclean, and that the exposure to menstrual blood brings bad luck to the men and boys. In Vanuatu, in one particular culture in Vanuatu, if men or boys feed or eat food from a menstruating woman, they will get stomach ache straight away. That's because this phobia has been passed down from generations to generation. It's a culture that also stands as a barrier for women to be dignified and to be recognized as human beings, and that they should also be valued as dignified human beings. Now, this can also create stigma for young women and girls if it makes it difficult for them to associate themselves amongst men and women, or men, for example, and boys when they're menstruating. Now, these restrictions in the villages can also cause emotional abuse. And if they're being traumatized by a certain scenario, if they're being slapped at or they're being sworn at because they're preparing food while they're menstruating, you know, that can cause them a lot of harm. They can be sworn at or they can be physically slapped or hit. Now, this belief has been strongly related to the idea that exposure to menstrual blood or menstruating women would bring bad luck to the men and boys. How do we prevent this? Okay, it's something for us to think about. And if you're listening from the region or if you're logging in from the Pacific region, this is something that we really need to start talking about. Now, when we look at the socioeconomic situations, and relating it to menstrual health or dignified menstruation, what do we mean? Simple things like, for example, water, wash facilities, for example. If a young girl is menstruating, if a woman is menstruating, she will need a lot of water, good running water. She will need good and proper hygiene. Okay? We need a lot of these facilities to be in place. She will need a lot of, you know, support, emotional support from the parents, from aunties, from sisters, okay, from her best friends. But if these accessories are not provided, then that leaves the woman blank or worried or less dignified. Now, in the sexual reproductive health rights, we look at the provision of menstrual products, such as, for example, providing those menstrual pads, those sanitary pads. Now, how does the sanitary pads link to, for example, sexual transmitted infections? Or how about if they're not being properly looked at, or if the provisions of these accessories, these essential accessories, are not provided, then the woman can contract other conditions, like, for example, urinary tract infections, if I may say, if there's no sanitary pads, if there's no clean and running water, if there's no hygiene facilities, then we really need to be careful. Now, for example, other things that we also need to look at, the facilities that are quite necessary when a woman is menstruating, that this needs to be provided. Clean, accessible toilets with good doors that have locks within. You don't want a menstruating woman or a menstruating young girl going to a toilet with no good, with no good running water, no soap, and a broken door. You don't want that. When a girl is menstruating, she's in that level of purity, self purity, that very valuable moment, that very unique taboo within herself. This is her and her environment and her world. She's bleeding, but she's okay with it. But why are people discriminating her? Why are the boys laughing at her? Why are the men saying it's taboo for her to mingle with the boys and the men in the village because she doesn't fit? Okay, so these are the practices that are currently going on. We're in the 21st century, okay, and we're still talking about these taboos. In schools, for example, the girls get laughed at by the boys and even girls when they stain their dress or they stain their skirts. And then when they're having their menstrual period and they're sitting in class and they're being very mindful of not staining their skirt or dress, or they'd be laughed at when they get up. Okay? So these also disturb their learning in class as well. There was a study that's conducted by this guy called Mason, and she said, he said, although education on menstrual health is important, we also need to look at other activities as well to improve girls' educational outcomes. How does our economy or our economic status impact the life of a menstruating girl? Apart from the changes to diet, for example, when a girl is menstruating, coming from a poverty stricken home or poverty stricken island or community, she'll have a choice. She'll have to make the choice between either buying a pad, toilet paper, soap, or a good meal. Now, a lot of cultures, for example, if they're religiously stricken from entering churches because they're having their menstrual period, or that they cannot have sex because they're having their menstrual period. This becomes a big label. Now, we don't have the right to label other human beings. If we do, then that is forms of discrimination. Okay? Practices like that can contribute to economic consequences, like, for example, the increasing number of adult women engaging in the workforce. When a young woman is in the workforce and she's being mindful of her period, and then if she has to share a toilet with numerous other men men and women at the workplace, of course she'll be mindful of her period. And if she stained the chair, or stained the dress, or stained her skirt, how many of the people at the workplace can support her? Okay. I've had personal experiences where that happened to me, and I get a lot of support. I got a lot of support from friends and from work colleagues. But I don't know if other girls and women out there are able to get the same treatment like I did. It really depends. That's why we need to draw back to the value of respecting every individual human rights. Your right, if you're dignified, we can amplify and we can support for you to obtain and fully access your human rights. But if you don't access that human right, if you're not fully dignified, then you need to speak up. And that's why we're here today, to speak up for those that cannot speak for themselves. Now, the other things that I also want to talk about is that level of poverty that's currently impacting the dignification of women and girls. Now, a lot of manufacturing company, for example, pharmaceutical companies are producing a lot of very innovative, dignified sanitary pads, you know, and they're saying, oh, you go to the shelf and you find this one. This is really good because it's thick. Okay, it's thin, but yeah, it's thick when you're menstruating because the absorption is better. But how much is it? Okay, the cost has become a barrier to menstruating women accessing their full rights and their full dignification as human beings. When you go to the supermarket and you look at the sanitary pads on the shelves, for a few women, it's about quality. But for a lot of women and girls from our region, it's about the cost. So when you're looking at a cost, it's simply telling us we have a story here that we really need to dig into the stories. It's about If a young girl has to choose between catching a bus to go to school, saving money for her lunch while she's in school or while she's at work, and buying a pad, which one would she choose? Of course, we know that a girl will always choose to buy a pad. Why? Because to save the embarrassment if she leaks on her dress, if she stained her skirt, okay? So she would rather buy the pad than buying food. And you know the consequences of her not eating lunch or not having a good diet for the next 5 days because she's menstruating. Okay, so these are the things that we really start to talk about. Quantitative studies of associations like, for example, Sumter and Torrendale in 2013 have also said that there's a growing body of menstrual experiences that needs a lot of research. But how many of us are willing to step forward and start conducting these researches? How many of us are willing to go and sit on the mat, sit under the trees, sit on the beach, sit at the coffee shops, and talk to girls about, listen to girls telling us the stories about their experiences of menstruation? So, this is a question that I would like to give it to all of us. See, feminism, it's not about just talking about gender equality. It's not about just talking about the right to employment, but it's about the right to be dignified as a woman. And I don't think we're speaking that enough. The psychological stress that menstruation can bring, especially if a menstruating girl or woman is going through violence and discrimination. This is not spoken about, and we really need to start talking about these issues. There's another research that I would like to flag it out here. It's called The Last Taboo, a research on menstrual hygiene management in the Pacific region that was conducted in 2017. It says the supply of toilet paper, for example, doors with broken locks, space inside the door needs to change. Okay, the cables are not working. There's no place, there's no disposal pin, there's no soap, there's no supply of sanitary pads. Okay, the stigma, discrimination, the embarrassment, all this. You know, the paper speaks about reality. It's a sad reality. Okay, but how do we take that forward? There's another researcher that's conducted by Alexandra Conroy on menstrual hygiene. And she said menstrual hygiene can still be a great taboo in the Pacific region. That was conducted in May 2017. And she said better menstrual hygiene management is an imperative, is an imperative to empower women and girls in the region. Imagine, for example, for 5 days that you were forbidden to interact with boys or men, or from cooking and touching cooking utensils, in fear that you might contaminate their food. What if, okay, you're not allowed to bathe? And of course, yes, in some cultures, when women and girls are menstruating, they're not allowed to bathe daily until after 5 days. Then you can go down to the beach and bathe in the seawater. Now, imagine the smell. Imagine the feeling. A girl can't go out. In a lot of these cultures, girls are shut in their little huts. They cannot come out and associate themselves with their families. A lot of these women can be shut in their little huts and they're not even allowed to see their husbands. They're not even allowed to see their children. Imagine the emotional trauma, okay, the stress that they go through, okay? There's a lot of women that are currently facing those situations. Now, let us all be clear here that as a girl, you have the right to be dignified. You have the right to access every utensils, every materials that you need in order to be dignified. But let's look at some of the challenges that can be brought forward to hinder the accessibility for those sanitary pads, soap, wash facilities, okay? Things like climate change, for example, that's becoming a big elephant that's terrorizing everybody. During cyclones, when a girl has to run, leave her house to go to a shelter, okay, unprepared, if she's menstruating, then of course she will stay in her dress while at the shelter. Now, how do we support the girls to make sure that next time she gets prepared? She has this little bag, sanitary bag, that she has pads, soap, towel, undies, okay? That even if she's running in fear of the terrorizing cyclones or tsunamis or typhoons, and she's going to a shelter, all she needs to do is to pick up that little dignified bag, okay? The dignity bag, sorry, not the dignified bag, a dignity bag, and run with her to the cave or run with her to the shelter where, okay, even though she's amongst many other people, she can still have access to those essentials that she will need to be able to make sure that that level of dignification, self value, self respect is still there. Now, how does menstrual health rights connect to human rights? So, menstrual hygiene rights are really very much connected to the right to non discrimination, the right to health, the right to a healthy environment, the right to education, and the right to work or employment. The right to health is also at risk if the woman is using unclean clothes without the ability to wash at the greater risk of developing infections. That's why I said earlier in my statement that if there is lack of sanitary pads or proper wash facilities, then the menstruating young woman or girl is also at risk of contracting urinary tract infections. Okay, so that's another level of stress that can also bother the young girl. And if she does not have good access to a healthcare facility, then that problem can become paramount. Other rights that can be, um, other rights that must also be respected when a girl is menstruating is that she has the right to life, the right to clean and safe environment, the right to live free from discrimination, and the right to protection, the right to safety, the right to health, okay? Social, economic rights. When she's menstruating, she can still go clubbing. She can still go to church. She can still hang out with her friends. Okay? She can still go to work. She can still go to the cocoa and copra plantation. She can still go fishing. Okay? She can laugh. She can smile. She's working, but she's bleeding. It's okay. Okay? That's her right. See, she has to live and be dignified. She has that, you know, she has the freedom to live the life. She's been given that life at birth. How will you support her? Okay, so stop me if I'm speaking too much, Amber.
Oh, it's
But also,
okay.
yeah,
Yeah, we
all
will.
right.
We can discuss later. We can drill down later, and so that they can the the viewers can also understand where we're coming from and why we are doing this advocacy, so that we
Okay,
can be at a level at the same level or same page as we move forward this year.
okay, all right. Okay, so just another 5 minutes and then I'll give it to the audience or we can respond to some questions if that's okay. Okay, so what are the policies that are currently in place? Okay, policies. See, I'm scratching my head because I don't think there's a lot of policies that's tackling with this. It's frustrating. How can we ignore this? It's part of life. Why aren't people talking about it? We understand that it's taboo, but we can't be tabooed forever. We're living in the 21st century. It's 2022. Hello. So, can we move this forward? Okay. So, what do we need? The leaders really need to understand. The state needs to understand. The leaders must understand. When a girl is menstruating, she's not sick. She's not being punished. Okay? She's not smelly. Well, if she doesn't have shower or bath for 5 days, of course she will smell. We don't want that. That's why we need those good facilities. So, what are we asking here? We need to improve leadership. We need to action those menstrual health strategies. Okay. What do we need? We need to strengthen commitments to education. School health programs needs to be strengthened. And if the schools don't have a school health policy, well, you need to develop those school policies and to make sure that menstruation management is part of the school health policies. Okay, then we can commit. Teachers can commit to it. The school-based management needs to commit to it. Okay, it doesn't matter if the principal is a male. You need to work with your female staff to ensure that you have those school health policies and that menstrual health policies need to be captured in your school health policies. We need to improve availability, affordability, and access to quality commercial menstrual hygiene products. Okay, now let's look at climate change. Now, for Vanuatu and one or two of the Pacific Island countries, well, for now, I can only think of the Pacific, Vanuatu. Vanuatu, I think, is the only country, correct me if I'm wrong, some of the viewers from the region, but Vanuatu is the only country that has banned um, plastic. Okay, so our honorable leader for opposition, Honorable Ralph Regenbanu, was very instrumental about this, and he was also into trying to ban the use of disposable nappies, which also could mean disposable sanitary pads. And then now there's quite a number of movements that are looking into making homemade um, sanitary pads, washable sanitary pads. And if that is the local solution, then we really need to start talking about it. But how does, how can we link this to what you're already doing? See, the global um, dignified menstruation is a high level institution that needs to be respected. You've digged a lot of information from the region. You've spoken on some of the cultures and you brought out some of the things that we aren't allowed to speak. Now, this is the first time I'm in this platform, and this is the first time I'm talking about this. And I am so happy that I am talking about this because it's been too long. So I thank you for allowing me to speak because the institution, like your institution, like the global dignified menstruation needs to be supported. Now, we need to bring out those less heard voices. We need to start talking. This is what we're hearing from the Pacific region. But what are the other four regions talking about? What are they hearing? What are they saying? Okay. So, what happens during this climate change impact? This pandemic also has really affected our economy. You know, the households are not making money as they used to before the pandemic. A lot of households are not making money as they used to before cyclones and typhoons. Okay, so this is the business that we need to talk about today. And for the viewers, please, give us your thoughts, ask questions. It's a space where we can discuss these issues and bring these matters forward. because it's important. I leave that here, Amber, but it'll be really good if we can hear from our viewers.
Yeah, thank you for that very substantial presentation of your experiences and observations as well as insights. And also, it was really striking to me how you presented the flow of the situation of the women and girls in the region. So for me, I'm very grateful that you took the space and you speak up and you gave voice to those who are not able to voice out their predicament as women or girls. And it's also very, for me, it's very refreshing to hear that you're taking this on a logical approach, and also you're looking at it at different dimensions and different angles, such as um, you started us with the local and traditional perception about menstruation and its impact. And it's really nice to hear that you are pointing out that women or girls in your community or in your region are still experiencing this, despite the fact that we are in the 21st century. So there really is something that we have to look into. And I think this is a very good challenge for every one of us, all the stakeholders and all those people who are listening to us right now. We hope that you can join us in educating women, girls, as well as leaders, so that everyone could take part in moving this issue forward, not only talking about it, but doing something so that we can resolve the discrimination. Actually, if we're not going to talk about this, girls won't be realizing that they are actually deprived of of hygiene. They are deprived of, because as we know it, boys will not be having this dilemma or this challenge monthly. They will not be bleeding.
True.
So within a 30 day period in a month, women or girls would have 5 days. And their choice, as you pointed it out to us, their choice is to what? Buy napkins or sanitary pads, or skip their meal and save themselves from embarrassment of staining their clothes or the chair. So I think it's really, we we have to also take a look at this in a perspective that femininity or womanhood or menstruation is actually natural, and we as a community, or those who have access to resources, should be mindful of supporting those who are deprived or don't have access to similar resources, such as quality pads, or in your case in Vanuatu, you shared with us that you successfully banned using single plastics, correct?
Yes.
And that actually is a milestone. However, there's an intended consequence to this, because
Yes.
the sanitary pads, they have plastic element to it, right? So
Yes.
it's a, I think the 21st century is offering us another level of challenge that we have to overcome or address. And I hope that we can be more responsive in addressing these issues. um so far it's really very enlightening for me also to listen to this. I hope that the audience that we have, or the viewers that we have here, can also be inspired and empowered to do anything that could help address some of the issues similar to the ones that Vanuatu and the Pacific region is experiencing. And I'm just curious about the menopause.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
are there situations, or are they saved from discrimination of some sort, or are there best practices in your community for those who are now in the menopausal stage of their life?
Okay. Thank you, Amber. So I guess menopause at this stage is personal. I'm saying personal in the sense that people don't really talk about menopause here in our culture, whereas in the Western culture, people write about it, joke about it. They wave their hands about it. They're happy. Oh, I'm in a post, I'm happy. I'm not going to pad the sanitary pads anymore. I'm no longer bleeding. I am da. They're saying all this stuff. But here in our culture, people are pretty silent about it. You don't talk about that, okay, I'm done, unless you're being approached by someone close, and then they'll tell you, and then you tell them, okay, no, I'm done. I'm not seeing my period. I've stopped seeing my period. I've stopped menstruating. But that's between person to personal conversations. Um, there's no seminars where menopausal women are provided the space to be able to talk about menopause because, yes, it need menopause menopausal women needs to be dignified. And I like to amplify and quote some of the very strong statements, very good statements that Radha, um, founder of Global Dignified Menstruation, has said that when you're menstruating, it doesn't devalue a woman. You know, you don't devalue a woman, or a woman should not be devalued because she's at her menopausal stage. You've lived that life, you know, buying pads, making sure you have toilet paper, you have soap. You've gone through all that stress and the happiness of childbearing age, and then now, you're no longer buying pads. You're no longer having um, those menstrual stress that you used to when you were ovulating. Okay. Um, so I've also did a little bit of research, but I can't seem to find anything, any study on whether women that are going through menopause are experiencing. So this is actually telling us that we need a lot of work to do. The global dignified menstruation needs to start looking into conducting a research and collecting storytelling methodology that we can do that. Just collecting stories from menopausing women or women that are going through menopause to tell their stories about their experiences. Because my experience will not be the same as that experience that my friend is facing. But because we don't talk about it, or because we don't have the space to talk about it, therefore it's not being recorded, or a lot of, other people are not they can't tell what's going on between women that are going through menopause. Okay, because we read it, I'm a nurse by profession, and of course, when I was going through my nursing studies, of course, we learned that women that are going through menopause can go cranky at times. You go cranky, you get shout at your children, you get upset over nothing, you get sweat, you know, um, or you get dried up and you get abused and discriminated at because sex is not that pleasant anymore. And then your partner gets upset at you and call you dry woman, or calls you all names, the labels that you get. This happens, and it does. I believe that this does not happen in the region here. It happens all over the 5 regions of the globe. What are we doing about it? How are we supporting? I do understand in our modern society, women are going through counseling services and going through counseling centers where they get, they see there with other women that are going through menopause and they tell their stories. We don't do that here in the islands. unless you're in a village where you're weaving your mats or your coconut leaves, and you're talking about you not seeing your menstrual period anymore, or you're knitting your wool and you're talking to your sister about, oh, I can't believe I haven't seen my period for the last 6 months. Okay, then they start talking about it. There's no formal spaces where women in the islands are being given the space to talk about the experience of menstrual of menopause. Sorry. So it's quite stressful, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a big need there. So I think, Amber, I think it's something that I would really like to highlight, and if I can give it back to you and the team, just something
Maybe
to
we
put
can,
together,
yeah.
maybe a concept note, yeah, that maybe, and anyone that knows someone, and or if any funders that are out here listening, this is something that we really need to fund. You really need to fund this initiatives. We want to document stories from the regions, different regions of the world, about how women are going through menopause, how women going through menopause in the midst of the pandemic, how women going through menopause in the midst of cyclones and tsunamis and typhoons, how women going through menopause in the midst of the civil war or in the midst
Mm,
of conflicts and war in Pakistan, for example, in Syria, in Afghanistan. How are
true.
women experiencing menopause? So I think we really need to start talking about it. And if institutions, financial institutions that are out there, I would like to make this call out to anyone that can fund this, because it's something that we really, really need. We need to start reading about those experiences, get women to tell their stories about how they're experiencing menopause.
Yeah, it's like we have to pause for menopause so that
Yeah.
we can have that space, and we can have that with that time, and we can have that reflection about how women transition from being menstruators to facing another phase of their life as menopause women. So I think it's not more of the biological anymore, because menstruation is more of that bleeding. But when
Yes.
they go through menopause, to me, as I observe my mom, it's not more of that, but more of social support and more of relationships, I guess. And
Mm.
they need attention, like attention and rapport from those around them. Because
Mm.
it's I think it's more psychological at that in that phase of their life. But I
Yes.
have good news. I have here one comment from our viewer. She said
Okay.
that she remembered that in first year, it's from here. This is from the Philippines. She
Okay.
remembered that in first year high or sixth grade, the schools taught the girls about menstruation, particularly teaching us then how to make cloth pads. So before, in during her time, there were like it was part of the activity of the school to create cloth pads, and she wonders
Oh.
if they in Vanuatu, in your place, do that as well. So girls here in our country were ready when they first experienced menstruating. So she was wondering if your school has that. Thank you, Tita
Yeah.
Fair, for this.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Amber. I would like to respond to that question. And then later on, I would like also to just give a little bit of my input on what you said earlier about menopause. Okay. Now back to menstruation. Yes, yes. Girls in the villages who come from low economic households have always been using homemade sanitary pads. These are cloth sanitary pads because they're free. The only thing that can be difficult and also can have a negative impact on the girl is when there is lack of good facilities,
Mhm.
good wash facilities, for example, no soap, no running water. And if she uses unclean or dirty clothes, then that can really hinder her reproductive health or urinary health, for example. But yes, a lot of this goes through the villages using homemade cloth sanitary pads. There's an institution here called Mama's Life. Mama's Life also, they have a website that you can look at their website, and they have amazing, tremendous products that they're using. It's homemade sanitary pads using cloths, but the thing is that it's thick. You know how they make it. I can't describe it. I'm not I can't make a dress, and I can't even sew a skirt. But I'm saying that these women can make amazing products. And the Mama's Line is one of the organizations. I say girls based or community based NGO, but it's looking at supporting the initiative of lessening the burden of domestic plastic bags usage in Vanuatu, but also um, to eliminate the use of um, disposable sanitary pads by making appropriate and low cost um, sanitary pads that are made of cloth. So it's really good. It's costless, but it can also be, if they're going to be made at home free, then it should be made free. There is also another organization that's based in Australia. It's called the Day for Girls. Day for Girls.
Mm.
Day for Girls is also an institution where they make cloth pads, and they're distributing it a lot to organizations. And for Vanuatu Young Women for Change, we've also had a lot of supplies from them, and we've been able to supply these commodities to a lot of our village girls and school girls. So they're really good commodities, and I really think that when we're talking about the impacts of climate change in our region, this is something that we really need to tap into because these commodities are very environmentally friendly.
Um,
Now, that's for the menstruation. If you excuse
mhm.
me, Amber, I would just like to touch base on your previous comments on menopause. Um, um, Although menopause is a normalcy of the lifespan, it can also cause a lot of relationship frictions because men that are hunting for good sex, or partners that are hunting for good sex, might, you know, they can uh, they can be classified, or they can become potential perpetrators of sexual violence and emotional violence and domestic violence, because if they're not happy with a menopausing wife because she's dry and she's non-exciting, then he will turn to a younger girl. Okay, that's the life on the bed, the life in the bedroom. So that can cause a lot of conflict, which then can cause domestic violence, physical violence, and sexual violence, all this. So it really needs a good understanding. Both partners, a menopausing wife would really need to sit down with a husband and a counselor, and then they really need to go through those counseling. Is how does the husband support the menopausing wife? How does the husband support her at home when she's going through those cranky times or those cranky situations where she shouts at everyone because, out of nothing? So I think it's more or less home-based management. Partner needs to understand that she's going through this menopause. There's reactions and the side effects and the impacts of menopause that on their marriage and sexual relationship has to be also um, supported as well. So who are the counselors? We really need to start identifying counselors, whether they're traditional counselors or whether they're elders of the villages, like I've said, traditional counselors, or religious counselors, or trained professionals that have the qualifications and the capacity to be able to sit with these menopausing couples and be able to go through with them on how do they go through this phase of life with dignity. Okay, I leave it with that.
Thank you for that, Anne. And also, with all those rich conversation that we had, it was really good that you pointed out the home-based management, or the teamwork that the couple should go through when the wife is on her menopausal stage. And
Mm.
however, I think we can have few minutes to discuss about Vanuatu young women for change, because this next point that I would like to inquire is about the participation of the youth in our journey, in our movement towards dignified menstruation. So it's, of course, the youth is the sector that is really vulnerable, and they're the ones experiencing it the first time. So without guidance, as you pointed out a while ago, they will be really scared. And one of our viewers said they might be terrified if they're not ready to face this phase of their life as menstruators. So
Mm.
please talk about some of your experiences or your memorable um, encounters with the youth and your young women for change there.
Okay. Thank you, Amber, and I'm so honored to be given the opportunity to talk about an institution that is very dear to me because I started it after the Asia Pacific Feminist Forum that was held in Chiang Mai City in Thailand. When I came back, I realized that the girls were not really into spaces about talking about national policies or giving their views about, how the country develops, the country developments are going, and they were being restricted of giving their choices or giving their views about national policy. So when Vanuatu Young Women for Change was established by resolution that was passed by about 35 civil society organizations, including the female cohorts of the Vanuatu Mobile Force and the Vanuatu Police Force, and the VANGO, the umbrella organizations for Vanuatu, we came to the realization that it's true that girls were being left behind, that a lot of girls were being restricted from coming into the policy dialogue spaces because people think they're not fit. People think that they were not good enough, they were not wise enough, that they don't have the capacity to be able to speak. But that made a change because when we provided the space that time, I remembered when I first got a group of girls to the room, and I asked one of them to speak, and she goes, "Oh no, but I need the textbook. I need the reading book." And I said, "What do you need the reading book for?" And she was sweating. She goes, "I need a reading book." And she reached out and got a reading book. And then she held the reading book very tightly. And she told us her name and the island and why she did not continue her education. And then later on, she told me, "You know why I asked for the textbook? Because that was my comfort. If I didn't have that textbook on my hand, I wouldn't be able to talk." See, so that just proved to me that a lot of girls who are illiterate or semi-literate, they also lack the confidence to be able to speak confidently about the issues that matters to them most. So that's what Vanuatu Young Women for Change is all about. Today, it's a girls-led organization with over 5,000 members, and we are stationed in a few of these islands in Vanuatu. We're also partner. We have some regional partners like Family Pacific, which is a community radio-based woman-led NGO. They're a dynamic organization, and they're doing a fantastic job recording the voices of women through Fiji and the region, reporting on the weather, and reporting on some of the issues that are being recognized and are being raised by women. So, Vanuatu Young Women for Change is currently focusing on building the leadership of young women and girls, supporting young women and girls to go to school, just for example, really breaking down the issues. Like, for example, okay, this girl might tell you, "I'm not at school, I don't continue my learning anymore because I don't have the finances to be able to do so." So what the girls do here at the office is that they sit with the girls and they tell their story. The girls tell their stories and then they document their stories. And then they go one by one, they look at the stories, the issues, and then they say, okay, how about we do this? So they look at cost effective ways, costless ways that will, looking at very contextualized local resolutions that will enable the girl to go back to school or will enable the girl to go back to employment or even to create a CV, develop a CV. So over the years, I find myself sitting with young women and girls, counseling, reproductive health counseling, also as a registered nurse, treating STIs, and providing leadership training, and doing all sorts of stuff. But today, I'm so happy that today I'm just sitting as a technical advisor and I'm seeing the girls blooming, they're flowering away, they're just talking and they're doing their own research and they're coming up with all these fantastic ideas. So today I'm proud also to say that when you invest in a girl, you will harvest the result. You will harvest it. It might take time and it might take it needs a lot of patience. And I'm not very good at being patient, but I'm surprised. And I think it's a miracle that this had got me over the years. But today I can see this is the office. I sit here and I look around and it's an office where a story began in 2013 and they're building it. It's becoming more stronger and stronger. And they're sharing a platform with ActionAid Vanuatu, and this platform is called Shifting the Power Coalition. It's a platform whereby um, women come in and they identify issues and then they share those issues. But it's all about how do we build the leadership of women in the region and how do we build the leadership of women in whatever work that they do, whether in a humanitarian setting or whether in a professional setting or whether in a rural setting, despite the originality and the context of where the woman comes from. Woman needs to be valued as a woman. Girls need to be valued as a girl, and they need to be dignified. The dignification of women is not just based on their economic status or their social status. So the shifting the power coalition is more or less bringing the women together, realizing, coming into the realization of what their needs are, and then how do we build on from what they tell us, their stories, the collection of their stories, and then we look for funding and then we see how we can support them. So the Shifting the Power Coalition has been through a lot of initiation and support, technical support from, and I'd like to mention a few names here. Carol Angier, and she is the Regional Program Manager for ActionAid Australia. Flora Vado, she is the Country Director for ActionAid Vanuatu. Sabrina Brown, she is the CEO for Vanuatu Young Women for Change. And I'm so proud that she is my daughter and passing on that generational leadership to the next generation. And I think, and I'm proud. I didn't just give it to her because she's my daughter. I gave it to her because it's something that's very close to my heart. And I wanted to see it grow. Okay, in the next 5 years, if she wanted to pass it on to another person, that's fine. But at least I know, and at least I'm confident that this organization has grown into a fabulous organization that has a lot of members. But also, there's this other woman that I want to acknowledge here. Her name is Michelle Hedgigan, and she is the country director for ActionAid Australia, and Sharon Wacken Rhodes, and she is the technical advisor for Shifting the Power Coalition. And these amazing women have done a lot of remarkable work to ensure that the Shifting the Power Coalition has stepped up from 2016 to today, and it's quite a flowering platform. And the coalition has been able to support the Young Women for Change address and conduct rapid responses and reliefs to a lot of our members that are out in the islands, especially Tana women and girls who are going through a lot of emotional stress and are going through a lot of challenges because of the ongoing eruptions of the Mount Yasur volcano on Tana Island, and then on Ambai when there was this big eruption on the Ambai, Banara volcano in Ambai, and then of course the ongoing disasters like cyclones and
Mhm.
that. But yeah, so today, Young Women for Change, they're going through media, they're amplifying the girls' voices, they're doing a lot of leadership training, but we're also big in research too. So we're really happy that the girls are coming up. That girl that was scared to talk at the first day and was asked for a textbook is now the president of the Vanuatu Young Women for Change.
Oh,
She can read.
congratulations.
I know her. She can read, she can write, she can speak, and I'm very proud. Yes.
Yeah.
So thanks, Amber.
Thank you very much for sharing that very inspiring story of Vanuatu Young Women for Change. And also, I'm wondering, are there any male counterparts who were part of this accomplishment? For sure, there are other uh, people who supported, right? I hope in our next conversation we can also name some males who are also into these kinds of advocacies, right? Because if women, if women like you and your daughter and all the Vanuatu young women there who are very supportive of this advocacy did it, what more can we achieve if we have some male counterparts, right?
Yes, yes. And sorry, can I just, I would like also to acknowledge the big, contribution from Susan Gray. Susan Gray is the CEO for Family Pacific, and she's an amazing, amazing young woman. I'd like to call her a young woman because she's young. She's lovely. Okay. And she has been providing a lot of technical support to Vanuatu Young Women for Change too. And I'd like to really thank them for all that. And also there are other names as well. I mean, I put it down the list. We're going to have another 4 hours for
Yeah.
listing all the names down. But yeah, thank you, Amber. Mm.
Thank you. So I think there we can have another session or conversation about all these things. But for now, I am grateful to have you in this space and this time where we were able to share and to listen to stories that would empower, enlighten, and also encourage us to move forward this year so that we can reach out to
Absolutely.
more girls and to also women who are menopausing now. So thank you very much, and I hope all the best for your young women for change and for all those viewers out there. Please reach out to us, or if you want to support um, Anne Pacoa's initiative or advocacy, please do reach out to us or send your message in the Global South Coalition Facebook page or website so that we can also listen or read your comments or support for us. Thank you very much. So I think that's all for us for this conversation. I hope everyone enjoyed and learned more about women's rights, not only that, but dignified menstruation as well as sexual reproductive health rights. Every right should be respected, and it is our human right to be protected. So thank you. I am Amber Luminario from the Philippines. Until we have our dignified conversation soon. Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Take
Thank you so
care.
much.